Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a time machine to explore the incredibly rich cultural tapestry of Sri Lankan performance art. We're going to be looking at a totally fascinating historical contrast between two traditional theatrical forms that absolutely defined entertainment for generations. I'm talking about Nurthi and Nadagam. If you've ever wondered how stage dramas evolved way before the silver screen took over, well, you are in the exact right place. So let's kick things off by imagining a Friday night, way back in the day, long before modern cinema or streaming existed. How are you spending your evening? Would you prefer a quick, contained indoor show packed with mechanical stage effects and glittering costumes? Or would you rather bundle up for a massive, all-night outdoor festival performed literally right on the sand? These aren't just hypothetical choices. They actually capture the core differences between the two theatrical titans of Sri Lanka. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll hit the origins of Sri Lankan theater, then move into setting the stage, followed by the sound of the drama, and we'll wrap up with their famous works and legacy. All right, let's get right into it. Section 1. The origins of Sri Lankan theater. Let's find out exactly where this all began. To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look at the timeline. Nadagam actually arrived on the scene much earlier. It got popular around 1750 and was heavily influenced by a South Indian street drama style known as Therukuthu. Think of it as the traditional grassroots folk theater of the people. Then, flash forward over a whole century to 1870. That's when Nurthi bursts onto the stage, bringing an entirely different flavor, one heavily influenced by North Indian and Parsi theater music. This geographical split, South Indian influence for Nadagam versus North Indian for Nurthi, it really set them on completely divergent artistic paths right from day one. And because of that split, the early pioneers of these forms couldn't have been more different from each other. For Nurthi, C. Don Bastine is officially recognized as the father, bringing that polished North Indian-inspired style to the masses. Contrast that with the early Sinhala Nadagam writer, Philimpu Singho, who was absolutely instrumental in shaping the outdoor folk tradition over a century prior. Later on, Nurthi saw huge contributions from writers like John de Silva and Charles Dias, while Nadagam was kept alive and thriving by dedicated folks like Charlie Silva, Gurusingi Gurunanze, and Austin Carrera. These were the true visionaries who built the Sri Lankan theater scene from the ground up. Moving on to Section 2, setting the stage, indoor versus outdoor. The physical contrast between these two is just night and day. Imagine sitting in a grand indoor hall for a Nurthi production. It's filled with decorated backgrounds, actors in bright, glittering costumes, and, which is super impressive for the time, actual mechanical stage effects. It was built to be a total visual spectacle. But then, look at Nadagam. You're outside. The performance is happening on a raised, circular, sandy stage. There are no screens, absolutely no lavishly decorated backgrounds, and the actors are wearing much simpler, traditional costumes. It's raw, it's rustic, and it feels deeply connected to the natural environment around it. But honestly, the wildest difference didn't stop at the scenery. It came down to sheer stamina. Nurthi was structured a lot like what we'd expect if we went to a play today, a tightly paced, normal stage drama that was relatively short. But Nadagam, oh man, a single performance could continue throughout the entire night, literally from dusk until the morning sun came up. And if the story was epic enough, that exact same drama could be performed serially over 7 consecutive nights. It wasn't just a play, it was a week-long community marathon. Let's move to Section 3, the sound of the drama, focusing on their completely unique auditory landscapes. You can really hear the differences in their foundational music styles. Nurthi relies heavily on North Indian Hindustani ragas. The songs were purposefully written in a super high pitch, demanding that the actors sing with a really strong, open voice just to fill those cavernous indoor halls. Nadagam, on the flip side, is built on South Indian Carnatic music. Its auditory texture is incredibly unique because it seamlessly blends tuneless kave, which is kind of a rhythmic storytelling poetry, with more structured, tuneful songs. And you kind of needed that auditory variety to keep the outdoor audience hooked over those long, grueling nights. And obviously, you can't have drama without a rhythm section, right? The instrumental backbone backing those voices was entirely different. Nurthi's main drum was the tabla, often accompanied by the harmonium, which gave it that very distinct North Indian flavor. Over in the Nadagam camp, the beat was driven by the mudala drum, playing right alongside traditional instruments like the harnawewa and the talambata. Now, while both forms did later adopt instruments like the violin and the bamboo flute, their core acoustic signatures were basically fundamentally opposed from day one. Here's a really cool structural quirk. If you were sitting in the crowd for a Nadagam, you'd be guided through this massive, sprawling narrative by a figure known as the Pothegora. This special, dedicated narrator was absolutely crucial for leading the audience through an epic, all-night story. They provided the context, the pacing, the whole shebang. Nurthi, on the other hand, names no special narrator at all in its traditional notes. It just relied on the modern theatrical convention of the characters driving the plot forward entirely on their own.
Okay, picture this. It's 4 a.m., your audience has been sitting on the sand all night, and dawn is fast approaching. How do you keep them awake? You deploy the urutua. This is a special musical section exclusive to Nadagam, sung near the very end of the performance. The urutua dramatically shifts to a much higher pitch and is performed at literally twice the earlier speed. It was this brilliant, built-in musical espresso shot designed to jolt the sleepy audience awake and end the morning on an absolute high note. Nurthi, being a shorter indoor play, just didn't need that kind of adrenaline burst.
And finally, Section 4, Famous Works and Legacy. Let's talk about the lasting footprints these art forms left behind. These historic plays absolutely dominated their respective eras. They were the blockbuster hits of their time. For Nurthi, you have legendary titles like Sri Sangabo, Sri Wikrama, Ramayana, and Pandukabaya. These gave us immortal cultural treasures, including the famous song Dano Budanje from Sri Sangabo, which people still celebrate today. Meanwhile, the Nadagam tradition gave eager audiences grand epics like Mathalang and Ahila, featuring unforgettable tunes like Gambhira Nadathi from the play Belasana. A huge part of Nurthi's massive success specifically came down to its musical masterminds. We're talking about composers like Vishwanath Laji, Mohan Lal, and Abdul Aziz. These guys were instrumental. They're the ones who deliberately wove that distinctive North Indian musical flavor into the Sri Lankan stage, elevating Nurthi's indoor theatrical spectacle with rich, raga-based melodies that audiences just couldn't get enough of. So if we boil it all down, it comes to this fundamental divide. Nurthi is the indoor theater style characterized by North Indian music, high-pitched singing, and rich mechanical stage effects. Nadagam, or conversely, is the outdoor, deeply traditional folk theater style, rooted in South Indian music, guided by a narrator, and performed on a simpler, sandy stage under the night sky. I want to leave you with this final thought. After seeing exactly how these two distinct worlds operated, if you could travel back in time, which of these incredible theatrical experiences would you actually choose to witness? Would you buy a ticket for the glittering indoor spectacle of Nurthi? Or would you brave the night, grab a spot on the sand, and let the outdoor folk epic of Nadagam wash over you until sunrise? Both left an indelible mark on Sri Lankan culture, and both offer a fascinating window into human creativity. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive in The Explainer, and as always, keep exploring.